Hello everyone, my name's Dr. Paul Rose, and in this video we're going to look at some basic foundational methods for collecting behavioural data for an animal behaviour project. What we're going to look at are the key sampling and recording techniques that are best employed in animal behaviour research when you first start out in the field of animal behaviour science. And I've got two willing helpers here that are going to take you through some key methods and some key approaches to data collection techniques. So all behaviour projects require three basic things: an ethogram, which is the list and description of behaviour that you wish to observe, and you create this list before you start; a sampling rule, which tells you about the population of animals you are going to observe, the species, the number, and how you are going to measure their behaviour. For example, are you going to measure individual behaviour, or are you going to look at the behaviour of a group? And thirdly, you need a recording technique. What amount of time are you going to record behaviour at or on? Are you going to record continuously, making an exact record of everything the animal does? Or are you going to record at particular time intervals, and therefore you are going to record behaviour at specific time points throughout the course of your overall observation period? Ethograms, sampling rules, and recording methods are the three basic foundations for a good animal behaviour project. So let's imagine that you have two animals that you can identify. For those of you that have watched some of my videos before, you might see that chickens feature quite heavily in them. So I've got two birds here, and let's imagine that this is my study population. These are my participants in my experiment. I have one that is dark grey, and I have one that is paler. They've got individual identifiable characteristics, and I can use these to work out which particular animal's behaviour belongs to whom. If you know your animal, that is called a focal follow. These are focal individuals. So rather than doing a scan sample, which I would do across my population because I can't identify them, my focal animals allow me to more accurately work out individual differences in behaviour. And the easiest way to record behaviour of focal individuals is to do instantaneous recording of my focal bird. So currently I'm giving these chickens a bit of cheese, which is their favourite treat. But imagine if I gave them some birdseed, which is a better addition to their diet. And imagine if I wanted to see how much time did they spend foraging. Now, because I've now put them on camera, they're not going to do that. But imagine that our project was to look at foraging time in domestic chickens. We could count every minute as our instantaneous time point, our interval. What is the difference in foraging behaviour of these two birds? And that gets me a more accurate picture of behaviour, because I can work out my individual differences because I know who is who. So foraging time of these domestic chickens, their focal follows, because they're two different birds, instantaneously at 1 minute intervals, is focal sampling and instantaneous recording. Sometimes we have to look at groups of animals, such as this flock of Egyptian geese. It's really difficult to work out who is who, so focal follows would not be right. In this situation, we would do an instantaneous scan sample. We would still record data at particular time intervals, for example every minute, but we would count across the group the number of individuals performing that behaviour on that time interval. So we need to know the number of animals in the group before we start. In this example, we've got a really big herd of red deer. This would be a challenge for any form of method of behavioural recording. But again, you could still do an instantaneous scan sample. You could take photos of the deer at your time interval For example, one photo on each minute point. And then you would count the number of animals you see performing each behaviour. If you were doing this for 10 minutes, you would record at each 1 minute interval, and by the end of that 10 minutes, you would have 10 lots of data points. And for each minute, your observations should add up to the total number of animals in the group. Remember, animals only do one thing at a time, so you can't have animals performing multiple behaviours. If you're new to animal behaviour science, if you've never done behaviour recording before, if you have to do behaviour recording to help you with animal husbandry, animal care, for an assignment that you have to write, I recommend you start out with the basics. Always have an ethogram, that's your description of behaviours that you're going to observe. Choose your sampling protocol. Are you going to sample the group as a scan, or are you going to follow known individuals? And thirdly, think about how you're going to record. Are you going to do an instantaneous time point every minute interval, every 2 minute interval, every 30 seconds? That will depend on the species and the question. So once you have your ethogram, your sampling methods and your recording methods, those 3 key points are all you need for a valid behavioural study. And if you are new to this, I recommend keeping things simple. An instantaneous, a time point sample is the best way of collecting data that is robust and valid, but is still easy enough to do in potentially challenging circumstances. For example, when animals are moving around, if you've given them enrichment, if they're likely to do a wide range of behaviours. So let's recap and put all of this together. Here's an example of instantaneous focal sampling. I've got 3 identifiable birds. So at each minute time interval, I am able to write down and record the exact behaviour that each of my chickens is performing. This is really helpful for individual levels of behaviour in identifiable animals. Now here I've got a group of chickens that all look exactly the same. So I'd have to do instantaneous scan sampling and count across the group. Again, we have minute time intervals. What I have done here is recorded the number of birds performing each behaviour on each minute sample. And this means I would get a group average for each behaviour performance in these animals. Remember, whenever you do an instantaneous sample, you're recording these chickens because you want to see what they're doing. Every minute is your time point. You don't record at time 0. Time 0 is when you start your stopwatch. You record your first amount of behaviour at the first minute interval. If you're recording for 30 minutes, that's 30 time points that you record at, so you end up with 30 intervals per bird. If you start recording at time 0, you will end up with 31 intervals per bird. I hope this has been useful to you. I recommend the Martin and Bateson Measuring Behaviour book for further information on behavioural methodologies, observational techniques, and how to go about designing and implementing an animal behaviour research project. So from me and my chickens, thank you very much.